Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the work session for, thank you, Sadie, for March 3rd. Couple things before we get started. We do it a little bit differently tonight. We're going to get to Public Works. Mr. Dickinson's going to run ABC. He's going to kick D back to me for Church Street and Davis Street. We'll talk to Sam Serio, then we'll have a couple folks from the public. More than happy to hear what you have to say. After you see his design, I think you'll be impressed, and we'll move forward. Then I'll kick it back to David, and we'll run through the rest of the show like that. Now I'd like to call this meeting to order. Let the record reflect, please, that all members of the council are present, with the exception of Mr. Bradley. He had a prior engagement, and Ms. Malcolm is under the weather at the moment. Moving ahead to city administrator update, Mr. Probst.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll be brief tonight. Just wanted to make one thing clear just to our constituents. Perhaps you can help get the word out. We do have a full-time call center here during the day, and then we have after-hours call center. So if anybody experiences anything from their cable TV being out to loss of power, water leak, etc., please call 770-267-3429. That will be answered by a live person. Please do not submit matters of urgency on Facebook or anything of that nature and other social media platforms. We just don't have a dedicated person who is going to answer those messages 24/7. So just please note that to your constituents, that we're always available. They just need to call that number. That's all I have right now, Mayor.
Quick and painless, thank you. Central Services update, Mr. Bailey.
Thank you, sir. I included on that front page of the projects and updates section a picture of the Plaza building, the old grocery store that we've started tearing out for the new police department municipal court. That's a panoramic shot. They've got all of the ceiling tiles. The ductwork is actually removed yesterday. The floor is stripped out. Everything, it looks like a totally different building. They've made quick progress here in the first week and a half, give or take. Thankfully, it's inside, so we're not facing any weather concerns. But their plan is to get it done earlier than September. So they gave us 9 months. They're shooting for 6. So we're going to keep fingers crossed, knock on wood, whatever we got to do. Marketing, we just published the spring newsletter this morning. And then facilities and grounds, you're going to see a little bit of a different look this year as streets and central services kind of combine forces. We've done a little bit of shuffling of the staffing to give us 4 guys full-time that are going to maintain the parks. And then right-of-ways, we'll have 2 helping out periodically from Public Works, and then we're going to use contract labor to maintain some of your more traveled corridors in the city for the right-of-ways, and hopefully keep those cut every other week, which would be your Spring Streets, your 78, 138, Broad Street, Alcovey, McDaniel will see an increase, Michael Etchison. That's the only ones that come to right off the top of my mind. There's some more, but we just want to keep a cleaner, better look as we continue to grow in the city, and that's the plan, and we'll change it as we go to keep these parks, right-of-ways, and everything cut on a more frequent basis. And then 2, last thing, between the streets guys and my grounds guys in January and about half of February picked up just a little under 12,000 pounds of trash throughout the city in a combined effort with rainy days and not many grass cutting days. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Bailey? Only question I had was when we're sending our guys out to do the mowing, do we have a coordinated effort to pick up all the trash before we run the mowers? Or we shoot it all into little bits?
Yeah, we don't want to turn one piece into 10 pieces. So, yeah, the goal is to keep ahead of things to where we can use those 2 at Public Works to kind of pick up ahead of the game. And then our guys, as they get out there, while we've got one group weed eating, we've got the others on mowers, the weed eaters can pick up the trash as they go too. So, yes, there won't be cut up piles of trash everywhere.
I guess that's better than me at home.
Yeah. That's right.
Thank you, Chris. Moving to committee reports, Mr. Adcock, Finance.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Thompson will give the monthly finance report.
Thank you, Mr. Adcock. You have before you the financial status report as of January 2020. Nothing out of the ordinary to report on there. We will be implementing a mid-year budget review analysis, and if we have any interdepartmental budget amendments that will be needed, we're going to bring those before you at that time instead of waiting end of the year to do all of them at one time. That was one thing that was requested. Malden Jenkins, our external auditors, completed their 2 weeks of field work here. We're still obviously knee-deep in completing all the audit-related tasks for them, and once we receive the final 2019 numbers, we will present the CAFR to you in the coming months, hopefully around April, I hope, April or May at the latest. We'll have Malden Jenkins come present that to you, but that's all I have. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Hearing no questions, that's the only item the Finance Committee has tonight. Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Garrett, Airport Committee?
Mr. Bailey?
Thank you, sir. This will be a quick one, too. We don't have a lot going on right now. With the weather, sales are fairly low, but they're slightly above last February. And the only other thing I've got is the ESP event this year will be on Saturday, May the 9th, with a rain date scheduled for May the 16th. And every year, that fundraiser is raised anywhere from about $100,000 to $125,000 for the Extra Special People Foundation. So if you can attend, there'll be volunteer sign-up slots on their website. You're welcome to come and just stop by and say hey. And that's all I've got.
That'll be all from us. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving to Public Works, Mr. Dickinson?
Mr. Smith, would you give us the report on Public Works?
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Just want to highlight some items of interest we got listed. Update on the projects we're doing at the transfer station. We have tentatively scheduled the work to be done the third week in April, and it's going to be a weekend job to resurface the tipping floor. And don't anticipate any downtime during that weekend, so we'll keep flowing. The curing time should take about 24 to 36 hours, and we should be back up running that Monday morning. The welding, same thing. We're going to try to schedule a weekend to keep from interrupting the flow. Both projects are going to have to be done on the weekend. It's pretty active out there. We're pretty busy. Also, we're going to be installing 520 feet of galvanized fencing, about 6 feet high, on the back end of the property at the transfer station to try to manage the litter and control the litter pickup and help keep it off the neighbor. So that's the primary reason for that. We did get two estimates. One was at $11,400, and the one that's doing the work, Elite Fencing, it's going to be $8,000 and right at $300. Transfer station tonnage report. We deposited 7,839 tons for the month of January, and we're already 1,000 tons ahead of last year, January 19, so we're off to a pretty good start. And the other thing I got, happy to announce, we will be starting our curbside glass collection on April 6th. That's the target date.
On April the 6th.
April the 6th. We are partnering with Strategic Material to do the hauling and do the processing. We're going to use every available media we can to get the word out, to at least get the date established, and also the type of material we'll be collecting. You'll see a little image in your on our note that we're going to be collecting only mixed colored glass and jars. And some of the questions probably going to be asked is what we don't collect. And that list will be added. I'll give you an idea. Pyrex dishes, ceramic plates, dishes, won't be able to accept windshields, windows, mirrors. Those are the items that the processor won't accept in the collection. and we'll get a full list out. And we will be collecting on the same day as your garbage and recycling pickup. Also, it's going to be collected separate. So if you want to participate, you'll need to contact the office, and we'll give you an additional 18-gallon bin for collection. And that's all I have. Any questions I'll be able to answer?
No questions, I guess. Okay, and then the Great American Cleanup Week.
Yes, we're asking your approval to participate in the Great American Cleanup. This is our 18th year for the week of April 20th through the 24th, and possibly 25th Saturday, if it dictates. We allow citizens of Monroe inside the city limits to come out to the transfer station and help with their spring cleaning. They can bring items out for free. We do put a limit on scrap tires. You can bring up to 10 regular tires, not the truck tires. So we will accept 10. Anything more than that, there may be a service charge for it. But I'll take any other questions that you might have. We just want to make sure we do that this year, this spring.
And we've decided not to do the cans that we used last year.
Yeah, that was quite an effort last year. I think we collected, 90,000 pounds worth of material across
Yes.
the city. So that was an expensive effort as well. Something we can look at doing every 2 or 3
Few
years
years.
maybe. But want to go ahead and get back to our normal cleanup routine for this coming year.
Are we gonna do a community cleanup day in conjunction with that?
We will.
All right, and then streets and transportation.
Thank you. I'll take this tonight. Over the last 2 to 3 weeks, the Streets Department has repaired 23 utility cuts that were in the system. I think a little bit of backlog and trying to catch up with the weather, cooperating as best we can. We've had one individual that I've basically had scouting out the city, checking drains. I know we'd had some issues with signs that were either leaning, damaged, or mildewed to the point that you couldn't read some of them. Speed humps that had kind of come out of place. Potholes that were throughout the city that have been identified based on the weather and then time of the year that we've had. We actually found 44 throughout. We've repaired 12 currently with coal patch, and then as the spring months allow, they'll come back and permanently patch those once we can cut out the area and permanently fix it. But just trying to stay on top of those and keeping ahead of the game as we move forward into the spring and catching up with what's kind of hit us over the winter months. And then I had mentioned earlier about the combination of central services and streets forces to maintain right-of-ways, parks, grounds, et cetera, with the help of contract labor. And I'll be glad to take any questions if you have them. But that was just a few of the updates and the plans going forward.
All right, it appears there aren't any questions.
Thank you.
So I'd yield back to the chair for item D, the traffic calming.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. I want to introduce Sam Serio. He's with our engineer with Keckenwood. This is regarding the Church Street, Davis Street traffic calming bid contract. The way this is going to work, Sam's going to show us exactly what to expect in these areas. After that, council who has any questions will be able to ask. Then he can have a seat and you come up individually, calmly, no emotion, ask questions of us or of him, and then we will move forward to our next section. Sam?
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Council, thank you so much for having me. What I figured we could do is go through each of the streets individually. I'll kind of tell you a little bit about the existing conditions, some of our proposed traffic calming measures, and kind of how we arrived at where we arrived at, where we are today. So if we could start, we're here on Church Street. So Church Street is considered by GDOT to be what's considered a minor arterial, meaning it's not a local road. Kind of in the hierarchy of road classifications, you start off with local road, just your local residential streets. You move up to then a collector, and then a minor arterial, and then major arterial. So this is kind of on the high side as far as moving traffic. So East Church Street is considered a minor arterial. It's got two 10-foot travel lanes or so, both rural and urban sections, meaning it's got curb and gutter in some sections, doesn't have curb and gutter in other sections. Posted speed limit is 30 miles per hour. A speed study was done where speed data was collected on August 6th and for the entire week, so August 6th through August 13th, actually of 2018. And the 85th percentile, so that's basically the 85% of the traffic is traveling at 40 miles per hour, which is 10 miles an hour over the posted speed limit. The highest speeds collected were 65 miles an hour above. So we had 51 instances over that week of cars traveling greater than 65 miles per hour on a 30-mile-an-hour posted speed limit road. So,
And I'm sorry, 50% higher?
no, I'm sorry, 51 instances. So there were 51 instances of people traveling over 65 miles per hour. Sorry if I didn't make that clear. Yeah. So there were 51 times during that week that cars were driving over 65 miles per hour. So currently there's a signal at South Madison and a three-way stop at Hammond. If you're looking at that exhibit there. So with the proposed traffic calming measures, with the 85th percentile speed being 10 miles per hour above the speed limit, traffic calming measures were deemed appropriate on Church Street. A classification of minor arterial ruled out what we call vertical deflection, meaning like a speed table. So because it was classified as a minor arterial, kind of in the upper echelon of moving traffic, putting elevated or what we call vertical deflection, meaning a speed table, we ruled that out, as well as other certain horizontal deflection measures like a traffic circle, those types of things, because of the type of road that it was. So median islands were deemed the most appropriate, considering expected the construction costs, the reduction of speed that it would provide, and the minimized effects that we were trying to do to the neighboring properties. So the design of the median islands, we use multiple references, including as far as some of our design guidelines, comes from the Federal Highway Administration, the National Association of City Transportation Officials, the Institute of Transportation Engineers Guidance, and existing median island installations that are around kind of the metro Atlanta area. So where we've seen this done before, where this has been done before, we didn't want to create something that is new to the area, if that makes sense. So the expected speed reduction at the median islands is intended to limit the speed to 30 miles per hour. So one of the things that we did also with the design of these median islands is check that that trucks and also emergency vehicles could traverse these median islands. So we have a program where we do vehicle sweep paths to make sure that they can traverse these median islands. So the last thing you want to have is emergency vehicles being held up in these types of applications. So we checked that to make sure that it worked as well. So one of the main ways that we are able to maintain and provide that traffic calming effect is we pay special attention to the spacing of these median islands. A spacing of 300 to 500 feet between median island installations was used in order to encourage speed reduction without overcrowding the street or allowing excess space to speed in between installations. The exact location of median islands was selected based on the proximity of traffic control devices. So if there was a stop sign or a four-way stop at a location, those were taken into account, as well as cross streets and the location of roadside elements, including utilities, drainage features, sidewalks, driveways. All of those things kind of had to come into play when we were identifying the proper locations for these speed control measures, in this case, the median islands. The cost per one of these is about $20,000 for each one of these median island installations. So that includes the repaving of the roadway within that limit, and the striping and the concrete work, and the signage that goes along with it. So as far as an example of what this could look like, I've got an example here. Taken, this a little grainy, but this was taken in the city of Berkeley Lake in a similar type application where you can see, this is just a street view of what that would look like. So I have a photo of that, and if you want to.
And if you don't mind, could you
Oh, sure,
show those folks too?
This is an example of what they look like in the city of Berkeley Lake. Is that only on one side of the road? No, it's in the middle. It'll be a center. They didn't bump out the road, but on one side, is that correct? No, it looks like it was both, on both sides. Yeah, on both sides. Yeah. So one of the main reasons why we choose the median islands, one of the other options are what's called chicanes, where you're doing most of the weaving. You create like a weaving effect in order to slow the traffic down. And one of the things that held us back from proposing that solution here on this street is providing that and doing all the widening onto one street would impact. We had utility concerns that we were worried about with the utility poles, the construction costs, the property impacts of doing all of the widening onto one side of the street. So that was ultimately how we landed on the median islands that we have proposed. We can move on to Davis Street unless we wanted to maybe ask some questions.
I do
about church.
have a question about church. So this is, the width is 5 feet.
I don't have the specific detail. I think the overall, I think it was about 2.5 feet for each side. Yeah, so yeah, about 5 feet wide.
So we would be moving into the right of way 2.5 feet.
Right. So we'd be going outside. So that was, yes, correct. We'd be widening on each side of the pavement 2.5 feet. Correct.
What did you say the average speed was down Church Street?
Down Church Street, the 85th percentile was 40 miles per hour.
So that's 10 miles over.
10 miles over the posted speed limit, correct. With about, I think it was 51 instances where there was 65 miles per hour.
Did it tell you how many cars it actually surveyed?
I do have that. I don't have it on me right now, but I could get that if you'd like. I think it was several thousand. I think that average daily traffic on the road is around 5,000, so 5,000 times a week. So you're looking at maybe 35,000 cars. That's just a rough estimate. I'd go back and look at the numbers. I can get that for you.
I thought, to my understanding, in order to put a table or anything in, it had to be 11 miles over the speed limit for an average of 85%.
Right, this is the 85th percentile, that's what this is. That's what is the 40 miles per hour. Yeah, so there's not a specific, to me it's, the way that I understand it, there's not specific guidance on if it's 11 miles per hour, or 10 miles per hour, or 9 miles per hour over the speed limit.
Do you have any idea what that is?
There's really not a
Yeah, there's not
legal
specific guideline, there's not specific legal guidance on that. It's, is there a perceived traffic speed issue on the corridor? And that's where, with it being 10 miles per hour over, that was what kind of triggered this. Great question, thank you.
I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
I live on the street, and I've met with some of my neighbors who have real concerns about this project. And one of the things that folks have expressed is these things, for lack of a better term, just look ugly. What, if anything, can we do to improve the appearance? I think somebody said to me, well, those things look awfully industrial. This is a very old historic neighborhood. It's not locked in cement, if you'll pardon the pun, that they look like that illustration, correct?
Right, so one of the things that we're proposing inside of the median is I guess like a brick paver looking hardscape surface. Instead of just putting concrete, it would look like there's a brick surface there. One of the things that we could consider, but I would potentially advise against is landscaping. If you put landscaping in these, they're really going to get larger. I know we've had instances even on North Broad with the landscaping medians. People just all it takes is one car to run over it, right, and then knock down the landscaping.
Just speaking for myself, that's one of the things I'd like for us to consider. If we could come up with a landscaping element that doesn't expand, surely there's something we could do. because I've seen these islands in places that are very high dollar neighborhoods. They tend to be landscaped in that neighborhood.
Absolutely. And
And-
because of, it's kind of that balance that we were looking for is to, the bigger you make the island, the more, I guess, room you have to fit some significant type of landscape element inside of it. So it's that balance of if you make it too big, then you're going to have to widen the road and impact, adjacent properties. So it's
Which
kind of
we don't want to do. And that
Right.
leads to my next question. I want to make sure that everyone in the neighborhood understands this. This project would not involve taking any portion of any citizen's property. The entire project is within the right-of-way that belongs to the city.
That's correct.
Because we're only talking at the widest point, 2.5 feet on
That's
each
correct.
side.
Moving, yes. So everything would be within where the limits of the sidewalk are.
All right, and none of them would impede any citizen's ability to get in and out of their driveways?
Correct. We space there's one location, I believe it's, if you're looking at the exhibit, the second one on the top row, the second one from the right. There's a large, I guess, swash of driveway there. So there's multiple access points either before or after. That would still be, but it's, yes, but to answer your question, yes, that
All
is
right,
correct.
next question, because this came up in the meeting I had with folks Sunday. Is there any particular magic to the number of them? We've got 9 of them. What is the rationale for
Yes.
9 as opposed to 5,
Right.
7?
Great question. It all is tied back to that spacing that I mentioned as far as our magic number is between 300 to 500 feet between spacing. And where that number comes up is that's the amount of time that a motorist can have to accelerate to get to a higher speed. So having them spaced between 300 to 500 feet, that's what maintains that speed, at the desired speed of the 30 miles per hour. So if you had fewer and had them spaced further apart, then you'd give people the opportunity to accelerate and speed and go faster, which we're trying to eliminate. Great question, thank you.
Do you want to move on to the next one?
Sure, we can move on to Davis, absolutely. All right, so Davis Street, its roadway classification is a local road, so it's kind of on the lower echelon as far as for moving cars. It's two 11-foot travel lanes with urban sections, meaning it's got curb and gutter out there. It also has a speed limit of 30 miles per hour. It also had, as far as the 85th percentile, also 40 miles per hour speed through that area. And that data was collected between August 21st and August 28th of 2018. The highest speeds collected were also, we had 4 instances in this case of speed over 65 miles per hour. So Church Street, we had 51 instances. Here on Davis Street, which is a local street, of over 4 instances over 65 miles per hour. And I know, I've driven it and seen, folks walking on that street. So that could definitely be a safety concern. As far as the traffic control devices, we've got a stop sign at South Broad Street. We've got the 4-way stops at South Madison, Pine Park Street, and Ash Street. And as far as what the proposed traffic calming measures, with the 85th percentile speed also being 10 miles per hour over the speed limit, traffic calming measures were deemed appropriate for Davis Street. So the tight spatial confines and the local road classification ruled out horizontal deflection measures, so like a roundabout, chicanes, on-street parking, and road diet. Those types of things are other types of traffic calming measures, but those were ruled out just because of the tight space that we have to work within. So in this case, the vertical deflection category of traffic calming measures has proven that vehicular speed reduction on local roads with similar speeds is appropriate. So vertical deflection, this is where you add a speed table. So you're not causing them to slow down by having to move around things. You're slowing them down by them having to traverse and go over a vertical deflection, in this case a speed table, in the road. So in this scenario, we also use the same design guidelines as I mentioned previously. The expected speed reduction at these speed tables is 10 miles per hour. So we're designing these so people will slow down and be driving 10 miles per hour when they're going over the speed tables. In this case, we try to space these between 300 and 400 feet as opposed to 300 and 500 feet. Because we're trying to get them down to 10 miles per hour, we wanted to keep that range a little bit smaller to not allow them to get up to full speed too fast of a speed. So, and this took into the same considerations as far as locating them by keeping in mind the adjacent utilities and drainage features, sidewalks and driveways, and where there's already stop control measures. So in this scenario, for example, if you had a stop control, you wouldn't want to put a speed table less than 200, less than 300 feet or more than 400 feet from that stop sign. So the spacing of this was very much thought through to make sure that they were spaced appropriately to keep the traffic from getting too high of a speed. And the average cost of installation for these is about $5,000 a piece. So I'd be more than happy to take any questions you have on these.
How many total do you have on Dave Street?
This was 8, so I think we had a total of 8. on
Yeah,
this.
this slide actually predates your request to add one closer to Ash Street. I just don't have an updated slide. So we did add that one past Pine
And I do have that here with me if you need me to pass it around. I'm happy to show you. But yeah, we extended it to the right of that sheet. So there's a total of 8 now.
Any other questions? What you got next?
Wonderful. I can answer any questions that you have if that's all I had to present.
Okay, Logan?
Yeah, if I could just give you some background on the logistics of everything. So back in December, I brought this before you all to discuss moving forward with Eckenwood and doing the full design and engineering of this and bringing it to bid. So that was approved. Just last week, we opened bids, and it came in, the low bidder, Triscapes Incorporated, in the amount of $222,404.50 for the entirety of the project. This is the same group that did the North Broad project. I think overall that project went really well. And this is going to come out of our SPLOST 2019 fund, and it's within our general budget that we'd kind of allocated at the beginning of the year. So the funds are there. I'll be happy to take any other questions of logistics.
22,404.50.
222,404.
I thought that sounded a little cheap.
Did anybody else in the audience, was they gonna actually be able to speak?
Well, yeah, we're going to call for them in a minute. Council? All right, Sam, if you don't mind, have a seat.
I can stick around. Yeah, absolutely. I'll stick around as long as you need me.
And we're going to have these nice folks ask questions. Ladies and gentlemen, if you don't mind, you may come up one by one. When you come to the front, just tell us your name, your address as well, and then direct your questions to the council, please.
Okay, I would like to pass this out. You seem to be a little confused on what the movement is actually going to look like. Would y'all like me to? My name is Linda Jones Seibert. I live at 505 East Church Street. We have owned our house now on Church Street for 22 years. And first off, I want to just say that none of us residents on Church Street disagree that traffic is a problem. We've been saying that for 22 years on Church Street, that traffic's a problem on Church Street. They fly down it. I do want to make a comment. He said that the average traffic was 40 miles an hour. I've always heard, and maybe you can say that or answer this, for the police department, that I think I've heard 9 is fine and 10's a fine. And most people go 10 miles an hour or 9 miles an hour over the speed limit. So I'm surprised to hear that 40 miles an hour is the average traffic that they're going down, because a lot of people go faster than that. I think that what has upset the neighborhood the most is that we did not find out anything about this until last Sunday, when one of our residents saw in the paper that there was a bid being put out for this. So nothing was ever discussed with anybody in the neighborhood. And generally, there is a sign on an office building, a house, something that is going on in the neighborhood. And I do realize that council meetings are open to the public. However, most people don't come to the council meetings. They don't know that anything is going on unless there's something going on that has to do with them. So I think that's a little bit unfair. Anyway, when we found out about this, we started making calls. And John, you certainly know about that. David?
Yes, ma'am.
We contacted all of the council members. I received notices back from 2 of the council members and answer back on that. Now, when we started looking at what these 9 medians were going to look like, if you look at these diagrams, the median itself is 15 feet long and 5 feet wide, the cement median. The 5 feet has to be taken into consideration because the curb is then going to be bumped out 2 feet on each side, or 2.5 feet on each side. One is going directly in front of my house, and this concerns me because my median at its widest point is just a little over 2.5 feet wide. So they say it's not going to affect the sidewalk at all, but this means that that curbing is going to go directly against the sidewalk. There's only going to be a few inches left between the sidewalk and this curbing. So traffic is going to be coming out towards the curb and then going back. I have a 7-year-old granddaughter that is learning to ride a bicycle. We're happy to see that parents are now walking their children in their strollers. People in wheelchairs or motorized scooters are coming up Church Street. This is not going to be a safe area on the sidewalks for them to be coming down. These are 9 of these. If you'll also notice, there is yellow taping that comes out into a triangle. This yellow taping, when you look at the distance of these, that's 60 feet. 60 feet. This thing is going to take up the entire distance in front of my house. And then each one is going to have 2 signs on it. Now, his diagram showed that it's yellow and black striping. We live in a historical neighborhood. One of our neighbors, David, said he had a meeting the other day. It was actually, we called a meeting at Pilot Park, and David came to that meeting. And we walked the entire neighborhood to let people know that this was happening because nobody knew about it. So we had our own meeting to discuss what was going on in the neighborhood because nobody knew about it.
And how many folks showed up to that meeting?
Unfortunately, nobody knew about it, but we're hoping that more people, they know that the meeting is taking place next Tuesday night. And so more people should be coming to that meeting because we knew that we were coming as representatives for the meeting tonight.
Yes, ma'am.
We had about 25 show up at the park, if that was your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Let's see. We came up with some options, though, and at that point, David told us that, yes, that this was not a done deal. My husband was purchasing director for 35 years at a company. When a contract gets in place and is signed, that contract generally means we are itching to start this contract. We want to do the business. the options that we came up with were why can't, right now, there is a speed limit sign going eastbound at the corner, well, not quite at the corner, but at Madison. There's 130-mile-an-hour speed limit sign. There isn't another speed limit sign until, I believe the address is 702. And then there's not another one until the speed increases down past Hammond to 35 miles an hour. If you're going westbound, there's one just after you get past Hammond, and then there's not another one until you get to Pilot Park. So there's only 2 speed limit signs all the way along Church Street that say 30 miles an hour. Decrease the speed if you don't want people going 10 miles or more over the speed limit. The other option, I had spoken to one of the engineers, I believe is an engineer, at Cackenwood, okay? And he sent me a bunch of information to look up on different types of options for medians. 2 things that stood out to me. One, some cities had done increasing not only the speed limit, or not increasing the speed limit, but putting the amount of fines. So it said speed limit 30 miles an hour, but there will be a $200 additional fine if you go over that. Well, this would be additional revenue for the city. What a great idea. Some cities have implemented that. The other thing was the city of Albuquerque, what they have done, and I thought this was a very novel idea, when they're going to put in speed medians, they have to get 75% of the neighborhood residents to agree with the different options that they are offering. Again, what a novel idea. Anyway, we talked about, well, why couldn't stop signs be put in at a High School Avenue and Pine Park Street? Why couldn't there be more speeding signs? Why couldn't there be an additional speeding fine? Why can't cameras be put in that automatically, like you see at stop signs, that automatically give fines out by license plate number? These are optional things. We had one neighbor that had looked up speeding bumps. Did you know that that decreases, just one speeding hump decreases a property value by $500? What in the world? $5,000, I'm sorry, thank you. So what in the world are these going to do to our property values that are just now finally starting to come up? We went through, especially those of us that have lived there for years, we went through where houses were going into foreclosure and sold for $60,000. Now houses in our neighborhood are selling for $250,000. What a glorious thing. Now they're going to go down because we're putting these awful things in our neighborhood. What we're asking you for is give us more time. Don't make this decision next week. We've had 1 week that we found out about this, and you're going to make this decision next Tuesday. Give us more time to study these options. Let our neighbors have more input on this. The other thing we were upset about, when we started calling around, the school board did not know about this. The Historical Preservation Society, or Commission, I always call them society, did not know about this. So many different people had no idea that this was going on, not only our neighborhood. So thank you very much for letting us talk to you tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Seibert. I appreciate your coming in. Is there anyone else who'd like? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Cheryl Larson, and I live at 501 East Church Street. I'm Linda's neighbor.
Thank you for coming in,
I'm a
Ms.
relative
Larson.
newcomer. I've just been there 14, 15 years. But the point that I want to make most off, number one, I anticipate having trouble getting out of my driveway when the speed median goes in front of her house. The other thing is, I would guess that the 51 instances of cars going down Church Street at 65 miles an hour are police cars, because those are the cars that sail down the street. Now, I understand If there is a need for the police cars to go that fast, I want them to get where they need to go. What's going to happen when they try going down Church Street at 65 miles an hour and they're going around these medians all over the place? The other point I want to make is why I've never seen a speeding ticket given out on Church Street. I was told, which was new information to me, that a police car has to be visible for 500 feet. What's wrong with the high school building, the old high school building, called the community building? The little office complex on the corner of Madison and Church? Those would be parking lots where cars could be seen, the police cars could be seen. Give a few parking tickets out. The police chief said, well, we can't have somebody sit there 24/7. You don't have to sit there 24/7. A random time of an hour here, an hour there, give out a couple speeding tickets, stop a couple trucks coming up the street, and maybe people will start to get the idea that it's not a free, open racetrack. Okay, that's my point. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Larson. Ladies and gentlemen, anyone else? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Rich Bauman, and I'm at 704 East Church Street. For those not familiar, it's the Hunter Greenhouse with the picket fence. I'm new to Monroe. I bought the house 10 years ago. 2 years and $170,000 later, I restored it. One of those is going smack in front of my house. House was built in 1898, so I'm going to be sitting on my front porch looking at that. So that's obviously a financial consideration. All the other options, stop signs, electronic surveillance, would be so much less disruptive and less expensive to the neighborhood. But from a safety standpoint, if emergency vehicles can get around those, so can some yahoo with a Mustang or a Camaro having fun going 60. And again, it's been pointed out, you have families walking that street, and now you're going to bring them at an angle to the street, the sidewalk. That just doesn't make any sense to me. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. You said Mr. Bauman? Yes. Just checking. Yes, sir.
Alan Seibert, 505 East Church. I just wanted to briefly touch on a couple of the other safety things that really concern me. Excuse me. A couple have already been mentioned, speeding. One of them, we may have to take with a grain of salt. I've heard this third hand, that the fire chief says he's going to be hitting these. The fire engines are going to be hitting these. The alternative would be to delay the response time, which we shouldn't be doing. And this is part of, what Rich said too, was we want the emergency vehicles to get through there. We appreciate having the good response time. So anything that's going to delay that is probably not a good idea. Linda mentioned the school board had not heard about this, and the reason that's important, that the information that the engineers sent to us included pros and cons of doing this. One of the cons was it's probably not appropriate where there are buses. Now I'm talking about transit buses, city buses. But the reason is because the participants are either sliding on the seat or losing their balance. Things are sliding off. There's a bunch of school buses go down Church Street every day. So this could be a problem for the school buses. We just know, and that's, I guess, why one of the main things, we need more time to evaluate each of these possibilities to see what really is in the best interest of the city as a whole, and at the same time, maintain the integrity of the historical district. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Seibert. Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I've got the one in back first.
My name is Olivia Chelko. I live at 518 East Church Street, so the blue house right across from Pilot Park. I've been there for 15 years. I do share my neighbor's concerns about the property value. I bought my house in 2005 at the height of the market. It's just come back to the price that I paid for it, and also I've dumped a lot of money into restoring it. So I feel like as residents, we should be able to get some sort of report or some research about what these 9 traffic calming devices are going to do to our property value. I also have really enjoyed how much the downtown has developed. It's being here for 15 years. I love seeing families, including me and my 3 children, walk downtown to events. I am very concerned about these things coming right to the sidewalk. And I think especially for me in the sense of, it didn't happen in Monroe, but I was hit by a driver, a distracted dad, who just turned around to yell at his kids in the back seat, as we all do as parents sometimes, and hit me. And I was 36 weeks pregnant, my kid had a stroke, and now will be in braces for the rest of his life. That is like nothing that this guy did wrong that I don't do every single day, and it takes just a split second to get distracted. It's not someone texting. Sometimes it's literally just you as parents, like, turn around for a second. And so I am very, very, very concerned about how close these things are coming to the sidewalk, and I just think that should be taken into consideration as well. And I also have also heard that the county might be looking to sell the community center that's right next door to my house. And I just would like there to be some consideration about, you know, for us knowing as residents how that's going to be sold, how much traffic that's going to bring to the street. I've heard also that it might become a school. I don't know if that's rumors or not, but that pickup and drop off also occurring with all these traffics, with all these devices, and how backed up the street could be at that point. So those are kind of my big concerns. But again, as someone who doesn't let her children play in the front yard because of all the traffic on Church Street and the how fast people are going, I mean, I do think it's a concern. I think 9 is a little bit excessive. I feel like we could have some options in between. And I think we just all want to be part of the discussion.
Thank you, Ms. Chalker. And how do you spell your name?
It's CHELKO.
One more time, do you have that, Debbie?
It's CHELKO.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
My name is Sally Fielder, and I'm at 414 Church Street, and I think I'm the one that's been there the very longest. We bought that house in '75, and we've had 3 children and lived there. It's a historical group. The Historical Society wants to tell us what to paint, what not to paint, what to tear down, what to put back up, but this just seems like it's so out of the ordinary for our whole street. It seems like, didn't keep your name. Sam's study is all about speed. Now, this says traffic calming. Is this issue traffic or is this issue speed?
The speed of traffic.
Well, we don't have any police speed. It's about speed. Why don't we give out some tickets then? Traffic will never be solved until a bypass perhaps is put around our town, and we know now that not 1 inch of land has been purchased for the bypass. Is that right?
They're in land acquisition. I don't know if they've purchased a property.
They have not purchased any property.
Ma'am, I'm not trying to argue. Please settle
Okay.
down, okay?
Okay. They've not purchased any property, so we are a thoroughfare coming into town. I recognize that. If this is here, we're going to shift that traffic to Spring, or we're going to shift that traffic to another street, and then it's going to go on and on and on, that we'll need these medians, we'll need this. I do suggest that we put some stop signs. You can put them at Bell Street, you can put them at Coley Street, you can put them at High School, you can put them at Felker. Seem to be able, you just put one at Bowl Springs and Edwards. So this is all about speed. His study was about speed. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Fielder. Yes, sir.
My name is Kev Barnes, and I guess I'm one of the newbies here because I've only been here for maybe 2.5 years.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Barnes, B-R-N-E-S. First name is Keb, K-E-B.
Thank you.
I moved in here about 2.5 years ago, and I live on the corner of Colquitt at 721. I've got one of those bumps right in front of my house, too. I've always had a problem with, with the speed here, and I also always had a problem with the trucks. No one's taken I haven't heard anything said about the trucks. You know, if you have these trucks going around these speed bumps, these islands, it's gonna put it close to the sidewalk, and you're also aiming them, just like everyone was saying. I've seen trucks go down there 50 miles an hour. They had a sign at one time on, down past Hammond, a big flashing sign that was put there, that you pull in with the trailer. And it said that no trucks over 10,000 pounds, they all had to turn to Hammond. I saw a couple of cop cars pull them over, was told they didn't give them tickets, they just gave them warning signs. But it's the trucks going down this thing, if these are here. It puts those wide trucks, right next to the sidewalk. And like the lady said, who had gotten hit by a vehicle earlier on, why are you taking that chance? Why do you want to have a possibility of a 55-foot truck go running into someone's yard just because you want to widen the road, when you could force them to turn on the Hammond, put a little, turn. You could hire, put some policemen down there once in a while. A truck that goes by, you can just stop them. You can use my driveway if you want to. It's right there. It's Colquitt. I don't know why they want to come through this way when you have Spring Street going at Hammond so much wider, but I guess because of speed, I don't know. I know that they fixed the corners up at Church Street, and they made them level so that when the trucks, do turn the broad, they don't take out the curb. But the speed on it needs to be stopped, yes. I think stop signs would be a much better idea. I don't mind this. I hate the fact of what they look like, but I understand what the city does. But again, we weren't told. There was nothing ever said, not until a week ago when my neighbors started talking and I found out. And I just hope you take in consideration. There's not a lot of people on that street who actually live there. You reference to the whole city. But we all matter, and that seems to be heard.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for coming in, Mr. Barnes. Yes, ma'am. Hi.
My name is Andrea Green, and I live at 707 East Church Street. This is my daughter. And several things. I think it was you when you were running for council. I had asked, because I don't know if you still live on Church Street, but you used to.
Been there for 40 years.
Yes.
I'm not going anywhere.
I specifically asked you, how can we bring back the wow factor to Church Street? And I've loved all the things that has been happening around Monroe. I mean, I talk it up to everybody, but this is not wow at all. Especially if that's what it's going to look like, because this is the first time me seeing this. And I just found out about this from a note that was posted on my door. I missed the Sunday meeting because I didn't get the note until yesterday. So, I was late here, but I think it's important enough to find out what's going on. So another thing is the new one that y'all built, I'm sorry, I'm bad with names.
That's okay.
Right here in front of Susie Wings.
Mm-hmm.
There was a median that someone crashed into that. I don't know if it was an 18-wheeler, but they destroyed that, and y'all had to redo it. So I'm afraid my front yard is tiny. So there is no space to take from it, first of all. Second of all, if there is an accident of one of these tractor trailers, they will be in my living room. And that's where we sit to watch TV. So that is a big concern. Traffic, the speed, yes, is a concern as well. But I certainly don't want something in my living room because of trying to solve a problem when there could be other things that can be a safer way. On our way here, I was driving from Winder, and there was a little tiny thing that flashes your speed. I don't know why we don't have, and it was a portable thing. Put that on our road for a while to let people know, hey, you're speeding, There's other options. This certainly is not wow. And I think it can certainly cause a lot more problems than what you're trying to solve.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen on the council, do you have any additional questions or comments for these guests or for Mr. Serio? Hearing none, I will say that next week, if this were to come to a vote, it would be a separate vote, separate distinct vote all by itself rather than on the consent agenda. So of course, we'll be open for public comment again next week as well. Also, Mr. Dickinson and I will stick around after this meeting if you would like to talk further. David, as you are the head of this committee, would you like to take it from here?
Sure. Okay, so let's turn to item E, which is the Midland, Washington sidewalk and parking arrangement. Who's going to present that?
I'll handle that,
Oh.
Mr. Dickinson, thank you. Coming up before you, actually next week, because it's kind of out for bid right now, is a bit of a public-private parking arrangement we've been working on for the last few months. You're all familiar with the Peters and Foster store. There's a lot of available parking right there. They've come to us and said, we'd like to donate some land, to extend your sidewalks, you know, maybe in lieu of offering 58 parking spaces, we can make some minor improvements to that lot to bring it up a little bit and beautify the area, that area of downtown as well. So we're working on a development agreement right now, and that'll be before you as well next week with the bid package. Additionally, when looking at this design, actually Sam designed it, so I'm glad he's here. We also added Washington Street sidewalks on the south end of the property. So that kind of completes that block with sidewalks. Given that, you know, we're trying to encourage a little bit more activity towards Pilot Park and the downtown green and just expand and broaden the footprint of downtown Monroe, these sidewalk expansions and cheap available parking is kind of a win-win for everybody here. So that's what we're trying to accomplish. Ultimately, we believe that when the bids come back, including sidewalks, will be around $4,500 to $5,000 per parking space gained to the city. With a parking deck, you're looking at $21,000 to $30,000 per parking space by the time you build a parking deck, which I know a lot of people have asked for around here, but that really should be a last resort in the parking world for downtown Monroe. So that will be before you next week, but you know, as we get the bids back, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, please let me know now as we're, you know, finalizing the development agreement with Peters and Foster and making those final adjustments with whoever the low bidder will be.
Are there any questions for Mr. Probst? So that'll be just for discussion next week, we'll vote on.
That was just for discussion tonight, and we'll have that before you, full council next week.
Thank you.
All we have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Dickinson. Utilities, Mr. Little.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Thompson, you're going to do the electric telecom report for us?
Thank you, Mr. Little. A few things of interest, moving around in our department now. Our horizontal directional drill was delivered. That was a purchase between my department and Mr. Middlebrooks' department. It has been put in service. The training went well. It's very similar to our old unit, and we will be looking to surplus that old unit in the coming months. Our micro trenching saw was delivered. This will be helping us deploy fiber into existing neighborhoods, but also help us in deployment of our Wi-Fi downtown and some streetlight projects that we're working on without tearing up the sidewalks. Ms. Thompson and I started discussions with Tantalus on the deployment of our AMI project, which is the automated metering, which allows people to get data off their own meter or for us to read meters very quickly, and that went well. MAB, as y'all know, is some bulldozers have shown up there, so I believe the project's actually going to happen now. We have met with them, Logan and I, about street lighting. That went well. We are working on design now. I've got a meeting with MEAG in the next couple of weeks to discuss the possibilities of that third or fourth substation in that area, and I hope those discussions will go positive. You'll see Spring Street's coming along. You can actually see the wire on the new poles. It actually looks like a power line now. You can envision it without the old poles there. It's going to look real clean. If we can get some weather, we can finally get done out there, but we're just going to rain the rest of the week, it seems like. We are still following several bills at the state. 309 Senate bill, which will allow us much more favorable financing on any telecom projects, is moving right along. We also have some coal ash bills that are running both in the House and the Senate that could negatively impact electric rates throughout the state, depending on how they come out. And that's all I have tonight. If y'all have any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Thompson? Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Mr. Middlebrooks, you want to do the water?
Thank you, Mr. Little. Just a couple updates on some projects. We've identified 3 of our gas rehab projects for the year. One being Southview, Bolton, Pierce, Reese, and Olympia Way, as well as Victory Drive and Harris and Lacey Streets. These were determined by our leak surveys from the previous years. The crews are still installing gas in Phase 2 of Stone Creek. Phase 1's been completed, the right side of Phase 1. This was the only undeveloped part. So we used it to enter second phase. The 2018 CDBG should be starting here pretty soon. Pipe's on the yard, but we've had some issues with some other material. So it's running a little bit behind. And as far as the Loganville Water Extension, we had a pre-construction meeting back in February, and contractors have been given the notice to proceed. And in our 2020 CDBG, we're approaching the deadline for submittal. So we're wrapping that one up. And then the McDaniel Street Drainage Project, we got 170 foot of the sidewalk and 1 driveway replaced yesterday. So as soon as that has time to cure, we'll remove those forms and we'll move on to the next section. If you got any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Any questions? Thank you, Rodney.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you, Mr. Little. Public safety is, Larry's not here. I don't mind taking it unless you had something special. Chief Owens?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Overall, you can see our numbers from January. We didn't have any structure fires, so we had no fires lost for January as well. Just some minor notes, we did have a driver-operator, fire apparatus operator class where we partnered up with the City of Winder Fire Department. That class is actually done. I was hoping that I could say everyone passed, but I haven't got the results back from the state yet, so we don't know. But it was a very good class. It's where we're bringing our original safer firefighters up through the ranks, so to speak. I don't know if it's a ranking structure, but bringing them up and getting them trained as far as driver-operator. And then our recruit class did start. We just finished our 3rd class, going to do the 4th one tomorrow night, and the completion date will be in August for them.
How many recruits do we have?
Right now, we have 8.
Awesome. Are there any questions? Thank you, Chief. Chief Watts?
Thank you, Mayor. Busy month for us in January. You can see our numbers as well. You see our calls for service was 1,624, and our officers participated in over 5,521 area checks for a total of 7,145 actions that were taken by our officers. Just going over a little bit of numbers here, our Part 1 crimes are about the same they were last year at this time. Part 2 crimes are a little bit up, and look at those numbers. I think that's we're seeing some increase in some domestic violence cases, but also with the implementation of that narcotics unit, I think those drug arrests is causing those numbers to kind of look high there. We did participate in 4 different community events. We held our annual awards banquet in January, which had a really good turnout. I also want to give some kudos to a lot of the downtown businesses that helped support us during that event. I really do greatly appreciate that. Our joint operations unit, that unit I was talking about, they executed 7 search warrants for the month of January and made a total of 13 arrests. Our total arrests for that month was 69 adults and 4 juveniles. And just going over, I know there's a lot of talk tonight about some traffic issues and stuff, and I forward to you, Mayor and Logan, on how we have applied for the Governor's Office Highway Safety HEAT grant, and that HEAT grant stands for Highway Enforcement of Aggressive Traffic. And if we're awarded that grant, that would provide a lot of funding for us to be able to put officers and vehicles specifically to enforcing traffic concerns here in the city. I actually reached out to Congressman Heiss on that and actually received an endorsement from him to the Director of Governor's Office Highway Safety supporting that. So hopefully that will go through, and that would just help further address those issues and concerns. And we did issue over 200-plus citation warnings for the month of January, and I'll be happy to answer any questions or if you should have any.
Are there any questions for Chief Watts?
Mayor, I did want to note that we're getting outstanding backup from Georgia State Patrol and assisting with a lot of these speeding infractions and the hands-free law enforcement, and also the Motor Carrier Compliance Division, and cracking down as much as they can on some of these tractor trailers that are in areas they shouldn't be. So they're working really well with our police department and trying to make more of a presence here.
I've seen him out here quite a bit. Our Officer of the Year?
Officer of the Year, Shannon Haynes.
So Shannon Haynes is also our Information Director?
He is. He's my PIO, yes, sir.
Okay.
Great guy, great officer.
Yeah, lucky to have him. Tell him congratulations. Thank you. Moving to Planning and Code, Ms. Malcolm is not here. Mr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before you have the Code Department report covering the month of January 2020, some of the highlights from that report. Code inspections, we had 93. We wrote a total of 52 permits. We had 15 new businesses. We had 21 businesses that closed. Major projects that were permitted in that time frame are the self-storage project on Breedlove Drive, ongoing projects during that time frame, some of which are closed out, some are still ongoing. Silver Queen, open and running, ready to roll. Everybody's loving it from all the reports I've seen in the social media. Main Street Apartments still ongoing. They're getting to the second floor of their framing phase, finally above ground. John's Supermarket's making tremendous progress despite delays by weather and other unforeseen circumstances. The city marshal removed 74 signs from the roadway. They did 192 repair cleanup orders and re-inspections, investigated 6 utility tampering and theft cases, and issued 8 citations. You've got the remainder of the report in front of you there. If you have any questions about anything I pointed out or that's in the balance of the report, I'll be happy to answer those questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Kelly? Thank you, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Moving to the discussion of major and minor subdivision developments, do we have
It's
anything on
just,
that tonight?
A general discussion kind of coming off the heels of some of what we've been talking about in the realm of major and minor discussion or subdivisions and what that really means in the course of the discussion of 1 to 4 lot subdivisions or 5 or more. I just put it on the agenda at the request of the committee chair, but if any of you have anything you want to discuss specifically about that, I'll be happy to take any questions, or Mr. Kelly will as well.
I do know we received an email this morning, many of you might have received it last night, from Mr. Willett, who addressed some of the covenants that existed and how he stepped it up, given us 10 covenants that he has personally put into place minimum square footage of 2,500 square feet. Front and sides of homes will be brick and/or stone foundations and fireplaces. Front and side area on dwelling lots will be sodded. Minimum of five trees with a 2-inch caliper preserved on each lot or planted. This does not include evergreen trees. No vinyl siding. Homes have 12-foot concrete driveways. Roof pitch is 812 or greater. All utilities underground. All homes shall have a minimum 2-car garage, and homes to have 30-year or greater roofing materials. No 3-tab or 20-year shingles. In case you hadn't seen that, I thought I'd tell you. Are there any questions or comments? And we will discuss this more next week. Hearing none, we will close out planning and code. Move to economic development. Mr. Ross Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Crosby, would you mind sharing with us the economic development report, please?
I'd be happy to. For last month, we did have Chocolate Walk. I didn't put that on here, but it was a very good event, so I just wanted to mention it. We had over 36 businesses participating in that and a large crowd, and it went very well. We got out the fire pit that the gas department had created for us, and it was a good event, especially for being a cold and sometimes rainy time of year. On the report, just want to mention, we have ordered new trash cans to replace the older ones that we have downtown, so that'll be rolling out soon. And then we'll be able to reuse the trash cans we currently have, hopefully refurbish them and move them off of Broad Street into other areas that now have a lot more foot traffic. The pictures on the report are from the Arbor Day celebration that was in Pilot Park. It's in the community garden area. 3 trees were planted and blueberry bushes, and the Georgia Forestry Commission was there to present our Tree City USA recognition again, and also give away saplings to people who came for the plantings and the event. Farmers Market application is open, and our Farm to Table event, the tickets went on sale on Sunday, and they sold out within 12 hours. So that event is sold out, and we're planning and getting that ready for April 25th. Be happy to answer any questions you have from the rest of the report.
All right, moving on to the 2020 concert series, Ms. Crosby.
Yes, we bring this before you every year just for you to review and see the bands and the cost, and this is who we've lined up for this year. Our plan at this point is to do 2 concerts on the courthouse lawn for May and June, and then do the additional planning and organization to do August and September on the Future Town Green with a larger stage and more space out there for guests. So be happy to answer any questions you have about the concert lineups.
All right, no questions about you, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you. I do want to add, our Minority Business Council held their Black History Month Gala the other night. It was fantastic. Couple of folks they had recognized were Miss Molly Lewis, who started a daycare in her garage, and for 53 years she operated that business, all because one of her friends encouraged her and helped her start it within just a couple of weeks. Really, really nice lady. Michael Hill was recognized. Grady Acreage, Jerry Smith. Jerry Smith was on council. His son Jerome owns the barbershop just down Broad Street. And just a really, really nice night, and I would encourage you next year, if at all possible, to attend. Andrew Kennison with the paper. I expect you to be there next year as well. And I will actually let Sharon Swanpole know I'm extremely disappointed that she did not show up. So, that being said, if I need to write an article for you, I will do so. And we will move to our Parks report. Ms. Crawford.
I'll take it up front before I pass it over to Chris. Some bad news to report. We did not receive the GHOST grant for the downtown green improvements. Apparently, we were up against some pretty stiff competition in that field. So we're going to drop back and punt and look at phasing in some various improvements starting this year, make the space as usable as possible, and then engineer out what we want to do in the coming years. All with our SPLOST funds, I think we can still have a great impact on that space. make it usable. But that's kind of where we're at right now. With that, I'll pass it on to Mr. Bailey to give us an update on the balance of our parks.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to report good news. Pilot Park, the request for proposal for that playground equipment is actually out for bid now, with those proposals due for submission on March 26th, which point the city will put together an evaluation staff to review those proposals. Essentially, we've laid out everything in a square footage and a general design that you guys had seen, and we're allowing these companies that provide this to provide one eco-friendly, recycled, material-based playground equipment, but to give them the creativity of design for what they can get there. And then we will essentially just start that park over is kind of my intentions of it, to completely wipe the slate, regrade, add sidewalks throughout it for a bigger walkability, to clean it up next to the house that it actually joins next to on Church Street, and just to revitalize it. And that'll be our first kind of statement park in the city that, since we've taken them back from the county. Ms. Crozick mentioned the Arbor Day event at the community garden there that adjoins it. And then the other things, we've replaced the swings at Hammond Park, and the lake that we are planning on building at Childers will start as soon as this rain cooperates a little bit with us. So like I said last month, it would be a great time to actually have a dam in place, because I think it would have been full by now. So I'll be glad to take any questions. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford. Moving to items for discussion, approval of major subdivision at 945 Holly Hill. Mr. Kelly?
Yes, sir. This is the item that you touched on earlier with Mr. Willett and his subdivision and the proposals that he gave. And if anybody has any further questions or wants to discuss it further, I'll be happy to field those questions.
Anyone? We're waiting that traffic study.
Well, I mean, that's a portion of it. I hope to have that in hand before next week to discuss. If you remember, the matter is on the table until next week. That'll be a portion of it. But of course, with the additional covenant rules Mr. Willett's offered, that can be a part of the discussion. You can also discuss that tonight or next week. Or next week.
Apparently, it's going to be next week.
Yes, sir.
Patrick Stone Creek subdivision, Phase 2, final plat.
Yes, sir. That'll be coming before you for final approval. They have all of their checklist items covered as far as development agreement and bonding that's in place for incomplete portions of the development. And they're ready for your review and approval and signatures, should you see fit to do so.
Great. Are there any comments from Mr. Kelly? Hearing none, talk about that next week. Patrick, how about beer and wine on-premise consumption at the Southern Ox?
That's just an application that's been submitted. I believe that's in order. Mr. Rosenthal could potentially verify that.
Yeah, that application is in order.
Thank you, sir. Resolution, Georgia Cities Week, April 19th through the 25th, 2019. Ms. Crozick?
This is Georgia Cities Week. We participate in this every year. The Georgia Municipal Association coordinates it, sends us materials, and we just promote the health of our cities and help educate the public on how government functions.
Thank you. Now, are there any questions or comments before we adjourn to executive session? I will let you nice folks know we're going to adjourn to executive session. We'll come back in, then we will adjourn the meeting, and then we can all stick around and talk for as long as you need us or until David has enough. I need a motion to adjourn to executive session, please.
So moved.
Have a motion by Mr. Ross Bradley. Do I have a second? Second by Mr. Adcock. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes, ma'am, thank you. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, like sign. Motion carries. Meeting adjourned to executive session.
Hey, Norm, do what?